How can I even think about investing when we're living paycheck to paycheck, when we don't even have enough money to cover our expenses? How do we ever get out of debt so that we can think about things like investing? I'm Kyle Garen, and these are the questions that my wife and I were asking ourselves. I know there are many of you in the same position, so today I want to focus on sharing some of our story in hopes that it'll be encouraging to you. I'll start off by saying I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. This is just me sharing our story. Most of you have heard the verse, "Do not despise the day of small beginnings." That comes from Zechariah 4:10, which says, "For whoever has despised the day of small things shall rejoice, and shall see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. These 7 are the eyes of the Lord which range through the whole earth." In the New Living Translation, it's translated, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." Some of you feel like what you have right now is very little, very small. You know what? That's a great place to start. I shared some of my story in the first video. Just a quick recap, I come from what I would call an upper middle class family. I never lacked for anything. I never had to be concerned about where food or clothes or really anything else would come from. We lived in a nice home and we took nice vacations. Things of life were provided for me and I never had to concern myself with where they were going to come from. Now, fast forward into my adult life and things got a little bit tighter. I spent most of my first 15 years of adulthood working in full-time ministry. None of those were high-paying jobs. I usually had just enough to cover all of my expenses. And I was fine with that. I was thinking that that was the best way to live. I believed having much more money than what you absolutely needed was excessive and unbiblical. I knew God wanted to cover my needs, and I thought that was the extent of it. I didn't have much biblically to base that off. I didn't have a clear biblical worldview on finances. That's what many in the church and the rest of the world are missing. If you don't know what to believe about money, you'll believe almost anything. I truly believe most Christians base their beliefs on money off of their own culture or what their favorite Christian teacher might say. And don't get me wrong, starting with what a Christian teacher has to say is indeed a good place to start. The problem is I've seen so many Christian teachers base their views on money off of a few verses while ignoring many others. You have to do a deep dive to really build out a true biblical worldview. So all of that to say, my family and I were living month to month financially. This was fine until the day came where I moved into real estate and began living completely off commission. For those who have never started a new career where you were only being paid commissions, that first month where you don't receive a paycheck is a tough one. It's even tougher when those months start to stack on top of each other. As a husband and father of 3, I quickly started to feel the pressure to provide for my family, and I had no idea what I was going to do. It was also around this time when we started to get hit with a lot of stress and health problems. It's no coincidence that health and financial issues tend to go hand in hand. One quickly leads to the other. After regularly going through the experience of having more month than I had money, I started to get dissatisfied. The question kept coming up, God, what is going on here? I knew in my heart this was not God's best, and there must be something more than this, something more than what we were experiencing. That's when I started to get exposed to more teachers that had a healthy, well-rounded biblical worldview on money. I also read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad around this time. The combination of these things opened my eyes to how little I really understood about God's plans for money and what He wanted for me. I had been working for money when all along I needed to put money to work for me. I had been a slave to finances. There is no way that I could reasonably answer the call of God in my life at the financial level I was living at. To do all that God was calling me to do, I needed to understand what the Bible had to say about money. I do want to spend more time unpacking this in the weeks ahead. So what did that look like for our family, you ask? The first thing I did was do what prosperous people usually recommend as your first step. I invested in myself. My wife and I took trainings on how to start investing. We saw that we could pull money out of our house to get started investing. And why do you invest? You invest simply to put money to work for you and to grow on its own without you having to work for it. I knew that if we were ever going to get out of debt and be able to fulfill the dreams that God had given us, we were going to need more than my monthly paycheck. Thankfully, we had bought our home at a good price and had been living there for about 8 years. So there was a good amount of equity that had built up over that time. So we took out a home equity line of credit for $40,000 and asked God what we should do with it. As I mentioned, we had taken a real estate investing masterclass. That was a huge blessing to us. The training laid out the steps that we needed to take to start investing in real estate and renting homes out to people. So the first question is, where do I invest? As someone who had a real estate license for the last few years, I had access to a lot of market statistics. One of the first things I did was to take a look at all of the cities within a 1 hour radius. I saw that each of these cities had great rental markets, but there was one that stood out more than the rest. There was a small city about 40 minutes away from us that had a medium-sized college. Immediately, I knew that having a college means a regular turnover of students looking to rent housing. I also saw that the vacancy rate of rental homes in this city was 2%. That meant 98% of the rental housing in that city was full. That's an excellent number, and it was much lower than the other cities in our region. Also, the average cost of housing in that city was much lower than the other cities. So I knew that I could buy a cheaper house that would be in higher demand compared to other cities. As someone investing for the first time, spending less money up front and knowing you have a higher demand for it was very reassuring. So we bought our first rental house for the whopping price tag of $73,000. And this was only a handful of years ago. If you're thinking to yourself, man, he must have bought that house in the 1970s. Just know that there are still incredible deals out there if you look around and do your homework. We put 10% down on the loan to purchase the house, so it cost us around $7,500. One thing I recommend for newer investors, or really anyone for that matter, is to get to know the lenders around you. You want to find the ones who can offer you the best lending options. A great lender is an invaluable partner for an investor. Most of the banks wanted us to put 15 to 20% down. And even in that scenario, $14,000 is not bad for buying an investment property as long as it will cash flow. And cash flowing just means that you're going to be making more money than what you're going to have to pay in expenses. So that way you actually are getting a profit. Now, the house we bought had already been a rental property. The previous owner was not getting market value though. After doing the math, I saw that I could double what he was charging in rent for this small 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. And that's the key right there. If you're looking to invest in real estate, you want to look for easy value-add opportunities. There are a lot of owners out there that are not charging what the market says they should be charging. Maybe they've owned the home for long enough that they're getting what they need, and they just have no interest in charging more. For us, this was a great deal. Only about half of the monthly rent was going towards our costs and expenses. The rest was profit, which you need as much of as you can get as a new investor just starting out. We owned that home for about 4 years before selling it and doing a 1031 tax-deferred exchange. The 1031 exchange allowed us to defer taxes when we sold and flip all of the profit from that first house into a brand new 4-bedroom house in a much larger, more desirable city. Oh, and did I mention that the price of the first house almost doubled in the 4 years that we owned it? That first little house was an extremely good investment for us. So what do we do with the rest of that $40,000 that we pulled out of our home? Well, we spent some of it on education, which is one of the greatest investments you can make. We took a few courses to help us grow our skills in areas we knew we needed to invest. We also invested in the stock market. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the prevailing investing strategy out there for many people. It's all centered around retirement and safe investments that will grow slowly over many years. And that's not a terrible idea for retirement, but it's a lousy way to try to turn your family's finances around in a relatively short amount of time. I knew we needed to get out of debt, so I was willing to take a little risk. Even though I wasn't making a lot of money as a real estate agent, I found out that I was being exposed to some incredible information and really great opportunities. One of those came when a friend of mine invited me to a recruiting meeting to try to get me to join his real estate company. There was a really good presentation with a lot of numbers showing the company's growth and projections for future growth compared to other major real estate companies. And this was a relatively young company that was growing very quickly. I did not feel led to join that company, but I absolutely took it as an investment opportunity. They had only been offering stock to employees before just recently going public. So when we pulled out money from our HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit, I knew this was one place I wanted to invest. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly how much I invested, but I'll use a number to illustrate the growth we saw. Let's say we took $16,000 and bought stock in this real estate company. I asked the Lord for the share price that we should sell it at. He gave it to me, and we held that stock for the next year and a half. At that point, a few events happened that could not have been expected, at least on my end. COVID hit, and the housing market went crazy. Home prices shot up, and real estate companies became even more profitable. This obviously drove the cost of the stock higher. And then the company decided to do a stock split, meaning every share would become 2 shares. So people were hungry for this stock, and we saw the price go up until it hit the number that God had told me to wait for. I had a sell order in place, so our stock sold as soon as it hit that price. and that $16,000 investment had turned into $160,000 in less than 2 years. I was pretty happy with that. It pays to follow the Lord's leading. He was the one that led me into that opportunity and the one that encouraged me to buy that stock. He gave us the amount to invest and he told us when to sell it. That was the only time I've ever seen that particular stock anywhere near that price. And since we sold, it has been much, much lower. As stewards and investors, we will win if we trust the Lord and wait on His timing. There were some other things happening in our favor around this time, but these two instances alone showed me the incredible opportunity available to us in investing, especially if we listen to God as our financial advisor. I knew that this was a way to get out of debt for our family and to be able to walk in the dreams that God had given us. I hope my story encourages you to dream even bigger and to seek God on all of your investing opportunities. There are no limits if we are willing to trust Him. If you enjoyed this and want more content like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time, this has been Kyle, and I'm believing with you for your biblical prosperity.